Hello and welcome to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. I'm Bill Oram, joined, as always, by Brenna Greene. Brenna, how are you?
I'm good. I'm more interested in how you are. Because our loyal listeners, I'm sure, were clamoring. They were like,
Where
oh
were
my
they?
gosh, Bill and Brenna have not done this podcast in a very long time. What's going on?
It's been a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Well, 2 weeks ago, we had to punt because I was home alone with my 6-year-old who was ill. He had a fever that would not go away. And then that transferred to me, and I had a fever that would not go away and spent basically all of last week in bed, which is maybe the first time that I've been knocked down that much by an illness. Like, it wasn't COVID, but it was worse than the times I've had COVID. It was a form of the flu. My son tested positive for influenza B. He ended up having pneumonia, but he's better now. Thank goodness. But it has been a rough couple of weeks in our house, and but I'm back. And
back, baby.
Not only am I back, I want to start with something that brought me so much joy.
Ooh.
And it's the natural place, state track and field. I wonder if you saw this. I hope you saw this, because this is one of the most delightful sports moments I have ever seen. This is pure inject it into my veins energy. Did you watch, or did you see, or did you hear about? Maybe you had it on the broadcast on Coin 6. I don't know. I might have missed it. But did you see the final of the girls' 5A 100-meter hurdles?
Oh, come on. How could I not see that?
Okay, some people didn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so for those who didn't,
we didn't put it on our newscast because she's not from here. She's Thurston. So. Okay.
She's from Thurston. I would argue that it still has a lot of appeal, but that's okay. Brooklyn Anderson from Thurston High School absolutely was dominating the 5A hurdles, pulling away from the pack, clear winner, leaps and bounds ahead of the competition. When tragedy strikes, she stumbles and she falls, Brenna. And for so many athletes, that would be the end of their championship dream, but not Brooklyn Anderson from Thurston High School. What did she do? She did 2 somersaults across the finish line to win the state championship. It's so good. Like, of all the ways you can win a state championship, by somersaulting across the finish line and making it look graceful, by the way. Like, that was a 10.0 on the landing.
Oh, that sounds so miserable to somersault on a track. Ugh. Her poor body.
But again, made it look graceful and got a gold medal out of it. I was so delighted by that moment. The video is everywhere. You can find it. But that was my favorite thing from the weekend. And I just wanted to acknowledge that, because talk about turning, lemons into lemonade.
Yeah.
How many viral videos or how many track meets have you seen where, somebody's going to win and then, they cramp up or they trip or they hit the hurdle and their dream is dashed.
Yep.
And I just don't know that I've ever seen somebody turn it into a positive. And she still won the championship by 0.2 of a second. That's how far ahead she was.
Yeah, she was crushing. Cruising and crushing, baby.
Okay, so the big thing happening outside of state track this weekend was college baseball.
Yes.
And Oregon and Oregon State have both been, really good the last few years, especially. They both, Oregon went to a super regional each of the last 2 years. Oregon State was in a super regional last year. And the Ducks beat the Beavers in all 4 matchups this year. And then what happens on Friday, whatever the first day was.
Friday.
They both lose their first matchups in regionals they're hosting. Oregon State loses to St. Mary's, and Oregon loses to Utah Valley. Both were great games. The Utah Valley Oregon game was great, especially. There was some controversy at the plate with the Ansoneros malicious contact. Was an obstruction, really crucial out call that changed the complexion of the game. That's a
Still
sports
don't like
cliche
that
I
call.
love. I have such mixed feelings about it. I understand the call, but I also don't like it. Like I said this on the radio this week, but I'm glad that Pete Rose wasn't alive to see that, because he would have hated that.
Well, I just don't understand how the other player can commit the first infraction and then the second player is the one who's responsible.
That's what I was going to say.
It makes no sense.
There's an order of operations thing here, because the umpires ruled that it would have been obstruction if not for the malicious contact. But the malicious contact, and this is the point you're making, the malicious contact doesn't happen if the path isn't being obstructed by a catcher who doesn't have the ball. Now, I understand. I can't argue against protecting players and like rules that are in place to protect players, but I don't know that I like the obstruction rule in general. Like, you've seen it come into play. You saw it come into play for Oregon for the
it is the hottest rule of this postseason.
I mean, the softball team, Oregon, had a controversial one.
Yep.
And in the UCLA game, their first game at the College World Series, where they picked up a run when Oregon's runner was beat. Like, she was totally beat to the plate. But the catcher blocked her path, and so therefore the run counts, even though she was tagged a foot before the plate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she was out, but they get the run. Like, I don't know if I feel like that's right. And then obviously, like you said, with Ansoneros and Duck baseball, like, he scored. The throw was off. Like, he scored. The only reason that there was the collision was because the path was obstructed. So to me, I think that as an order of operations, the obstruction has to come first. I understand why it was malicious contact in the sense that he didn't attempt to slide, and on and on and on. But again, in an order of operations, I think the obstruction has to come first because that caused the malicious contact. That said, I would be fine with throwing that rule out, maybe especially in the postseason. Like, it just feels like, and I thought Mark Wasikowski, who did the on-field interview right after that play, I thought what he said was very relatable. Like, we were taught to play the game as hard as possible, and that's what just happened, and we're being penalized for that. So,
did you watch his post-game press conference at all?
I don't know if I did or not. What did I miss?
So he just kept. Waz has such a dry personality, but like in a good way. Sometimes that can mean someone's boring. That's not Waz. He's not boring. He's just gonna give it to you straight.
Yeah.
And he was like, the ref said it was a call made by
Pittsburgh. Yeah.
The replay facility in Pittsburgh. And he's like, I feel bad for these refs.
Yeah.
I feel bad for these refs. He just kept saying he felt bad for the umps, whatever. He felt bad for the umps. And I was like, that is so, he just kept being like, I feel bad for these umps. Like,
yeah.
Like, it was funny. I thought it was and then he went back to the we were taught to play the game, with fervor or whatever. It wasn't his exact quote, but and he really I tuned in literally because I was like, I gotta see what Waz has to say, because I know him well enough to know that he's gonna have something in this moment, and him saying he feels bad for the umps was pretty funny, I thought. So
that ended up being the beginning of the end for the Ducks. They proceeded to lose the next game to Cal Poly.
Yes.
And knocked out of their own regional. Like, a massively disappointing postseason for Oregon baseball, which I think a lot of people felt like this was a team that, had a chance to finally get to Omaha. Oregon hasn't been to the College World Series since 1954, something I've written about extensively and talked about. We're running out of members of the 1954 team, Brenna. I think my guy Dwayne Reeves is still kicking in Northern California, but there aren't too many of them left. But on the flip side, Oregon State, they lose that first game to St. Mary's 6-4, and they came back with an absolute vengeance.
Yes.
I mean, so they get their revenge on St. Mary's. They beat TCU 7-2. Then they beat St. Mary's 20-3. And then over 2 games, they have to beat USC twice to win the regional. including on Sunday night, which was their second game of the day, and then again on Monday afternoon. They win those 2 games by a combined score of 23-1. And in fact, after losing after losing to St. Mary's, hold on, let me do quick math. Fun circus music for Bill doing math.
Well,
43 to 4.
I'll put in some math
50.
stuff too.
50 to 6. 50 to 6 in the subsequent 4 games. Like an absolute ass kicking in collectively from the moment that they got tested. And they hadn't played, I want to say, in like 10 days, because obviously the Beavers aren't in a conference. There's no conference tournament to go play in. So they hadn't played. And I generally don't give things like that a ton of credence, but the way they played after knocking the rust off against St. Mary's, if that's what you want to call it, was unbelievable. So they host Florida State this weekend in a super regional. Go ahead. Give us a math lesson.
Well, I was just going to say they scored 43 runs in the span of 27 hours.
Yeah, there you go.
Like, that's insane. And they only allowed 4 runs in the 27-hour time span. Like, I was there. It was crazy. You were talking about rule changes. I have another rule change to put into the book.
What we got?
When you're in the postseason, I don't care. There needs to be a run rule. You get to a certain point, it's over. Like, the fact that they could not call those games after 7 innings was ridiculous. Those games were done. It was over. Good night. See you tomorrow. And we all had to just sit there and wait and wait and wait when these games were obviously over. And also, you should be rewarded. Your pitching staff should be rewarded, especially in a regional format. Or, the super regional format's is more forgiving, but College World Series format is not forgiving. You should be rewarded for having good pitching and good hitting and be able to save some of your pitchers. Do it. Like, that is, like, let's have a carrot for people for actually playing well. Would you have had when Minnesota beat OKC by like 50 points in the conference finals at home, game 3, would you have called that after 3 quarters? Baseball is a different beast, and baseball does have a run rule during the regular season. So
I think that, like, it's just not in the nature of competition.
And they have a run rule in the College Softball World Series.
I'm just saying I'm fine with, like, playing out the string because weird shit happens. Like, maybe not 20 runs worth of weird shit.
Come on.
But I like leaving the door ajar.
Yeah, I don't. I mean,
it's like we're talking about the highest level of amateur baseball. It's not even amateur anymore. We're talking about professional baseball. Like, you've got to see it through. You got to sprint through the finish line. Like, what would happen here? Young Brooklyn Anderson was so far ahead of the competition in the 100-meter hurdles in the 5A state championship.
Again, that is not a fair comp.
At 80 meters, they should have just called the race.
That is not a fair comp.
She couldn't lose. She couldn't lose. But what happened? She almost lost because weird shit happens.
That's not a fair comp, and you know that.
I am just disagreeing and saying that I like that you have to run through the finish line, and that the Beavers had to close those games.
I think that, obviously at a certain point, I think it's okay, but at a certain point too, it's like we gotta move on to the next day.
What's the number? 10 runs?
Yeah, I think if you're up by 10 going into the 8th, the likelihood a team is going to put up 10 runs over 2 innings is so minute and so small. And like I said, they have the run rule in college softball still. So I don't understand the discrepancy there. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So, yeah, and those games were just, it was over.
I would also just say there's so much offense in college baseball. Like, the numbers that you see in, like, college baseball scores are so big. Like, Murray State, beat Ole Miss in a regional 12-11. North Carolina scored 14 runs. LSU scored 10. Tennessee scored 11. Like, you just get so much offense in these games that, like, again, you're probably right. Like, nobody's coming back from 20-1, right? Like, that is That game is in hand. But I just think as conceptually, I don't think you want to short circuit these games. But I understand where you're coming from, and especially like, I mean, hey, we got deadlines. We've got shows to do. Like, we're sitting here, like, playing out the string. Like, I get the inconvenience and annoyance of it. I just think from a sporting standpoint, at this level, play it out. And I would say the same. I would like to see the same in softball. I'm fine with. I agree with you that I'd like the rule to be standard across the two sports. But my default and my preference would be no run rule. But I like the idea. I like that you're bringing rule changes to the podcast. I like the heat.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't really. I think that you should reward a team, especially in that regional format, and reward a pitching staff in particular in a regional format for playing so well. So
are you more impressed by what Oregon State did after getting punched in the mouth by St. Mary's, or more disgusted by how meekly Oregon went out of its own regional? When you have a potential Golden Spikes winner and you have he's the home run leader for the entire sport. You have a 6'10" pitcher who I had plans to write about and now will not get to. Is it more impressive what Oregon State did, or more disappointing what Oregon produced?
It's a really good question, because, man, both situations are so
extreme.
Yeah. It's funny because I booked a hotel in Corvallis for Sunday night because I thought to myself, this was before, we knew that they both were going to have regionals. And so I told my management, I said, there is a high likelihood one of these teams is playing on Monday. Just how these things go, we're going to have a situation where one of them is going to be. These regional formats always work out this way. The likelihood both of them wrap it up on Sunday is pretty low.
Yeah.
The reason why I decided to book a hotel room in Corvallis is because, quite frankly, I thought Oregon was going to wrap it up on Sunday. And I thought Oregon State would probably need Monday. Well, I was right about one of the teams.
Mm-hmm.
I chose the right locale.
The Ducks certainly simplified things by not needing to wrap it up on Sunday. They wrapped it up on
did.
Saturday.
Yeah, they did it Saturday. So I think in the context of that, I'm going to go more disgusted about what the Ducks did. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Coming into this, I had told myself I could take the counterpoint of whatever you said on this. I was like, I can argue either side of this.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, winning regionals are hard. Baseball can be a very random sport. I think the Ducks got a little bit jobbed by the Anson. I think so. The Ansoneros thing, they went from having a run in and a runner at.
It would have been 6-5. I believe.
Would have been 6-5, and they would have had one out with a runner in scoring position, and instead you had 2 outs, and the runner was sent back to first, and you're still down 2. So it completely changed the momentum and the structure of that game. Like, the Ducks were in position to rally, and that completely killed the rally.
Yeah.
So regardless of what you think of the call, like, they were marching, football term, but applies here. Momentum was with them. They were rallying, and it completely killed the rally. And so, if not for that moment, do they win that game? I would say yes. Should not have been in that position against Utah Valley.
Yeah.
So I think in a vacuum, I would say losing a home regional in 2 games against the lowest seeded teams in your region, after winning the Big Ten regular season conference championship, or a share of it, is so disappointing.
Yeah.
That said, the argument for Oregon State that I will make is just the absolute severity of what they did and the complete dominance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that just in a vacuum them coming back and recovering from losing their first game is outweighs what the devastation of what happened to the Ducks. But the absolute severity and lopsided nature of what came next, I think, is impossible not to be blown away by in terms of impressiveness. And I would also say the way they did it, because, yeah, they mashed. Trent Carraway homered in all 5 games. Like, he's on a Daniel Murphy-like stretch.
Crazy.
Shout out Daniel Murphy. Great Met, 2015. But also, that St. Mary's game, the second one, or it was the USC game. It was the first USC game, right? When they were bunting.
Oh, yeah.
Where they laid down like 4 safety squeezes, scored wild. 3 runs on bunts. Like, I mean, the broadcasters were absolutely, agog, saying they'd never seen anything like it. I don't watch enough baseball to say I've never seen anything like it or that there's never been anything like it. Like, a lot of baseball I don't see, but I hadn't seen that. I hadn't seen just such a commitment to the bunt, commitment to the bit, but the bit being a bunt, to that extreme, and then for it to work. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And then to turn around and then to mash the rest of the way. I thought like that was just so impressive. And I love that the Beavers showed that they can beat you kind of in whatever way is necessary. I mean, great pitching. They can beat you with small ball. They rake. And like, that's one thing about the Ducks under Mark Wasikowski. Like, they are very boom or bust. Like, the entire offensive strategy at Oregon is we're going to hit homers. We're going to hit dingers. They have set school records each of the last 3 years in total home runs. They've had a new all-time school leader in home runs. This year it is Mason Neville. Jacob Walsh had said it. Like, it's like each of the last 3 years there's been a new all-time single season home run leader at Oregon. And like, I mean, it's fun. Like, it's obviously fun to go to an Oregon game and watch balls get, hit into the parking lot. And I had a conversation with Waz once where I was like, like, how did this happen? Like, why are you guys like so dependent and successful with the long ball? And he like, it's very simple, right? Like, he wasn't quite like chicks dig the long ball, but he was like, well, home runs count for more points than singles do. And it's like, that's true. But I also think it's sort of a short-sighted strategy. Like, a bunch of like, or not a bunch of, but like, would you rather have 3 home runs or 3 doubles and 2 singles? Like, 3 solo home runs or 3 doubles and 2 singles? Like, what's going to produce the most? And I think that like having consistency top to bottom of the lineup, stringing runs together, being able to do it different ways is just a little bit more sustainable, especially in the postseason. And I think this is part of why you've seen, the Ducks, struggle when it gets to be this time of year.
I think I would side with you on the idea that it was more impressive what the Beavers did, if not for the fact that Oregon was the first team to lose in their home regional.
Yeah.
And just, bowing out Saturday, I don't think anybody had coming for that Oregon team. I mean, they were the first regional seed to lose in a weekend where a lot of regional seeds lost. So, I think that says that baseball is really starting to have more and more parity, which is exciting for that sport. I think that's fantastic for college baseball. But I mean, there's 7 host sites, including the top 2 seeds, who didn't make it to this weekend.
Yeah.
So, and now I say that, and I'm like, well, maybe it's more impressive what OSU did, because...
But also, maybe to the point, like, obviously Oregon was going to have to go to North Carolina, and North Carolina's been awesome. Like, they've been one of the hottest teams in the country, so, like, maybe the journey would have ended for the Ducks anyway. But when you start looking around the field and who's not going to Omaha, when it's like Vanderbilt's not going, Texas isn't going, there's a lot, it's like, there's an opportunity for somebody, right? And like, so when you're Oregon and you like missed your chance in a much more wide open field, you left some meat on the table. I think it works out really well for Oregon State. Like, the Florida State matchup is going to be a lot of fun. Florida State's got a lot of star power. They got a lot of pop. They got great pitching. I don't know how that's going to go, but like, you would say it sets up well for Oregon State at this moment, especially carrying the amount of momentum that they are in.
Well, I mean, having it at home is huge. making
for
Florida
sure.
State fly all the way across the country. I was surprised they didn't make that a Saturday, Sunday, Monday super regional, by the way. Just because the fact that OSU had to play on Monday and then Florida State's having to travel 3,000 miles to the middle of freaking nowhere. No shade on Corvallis, but, not exactly an easy trip.
No, I mean, Tallahassee to Corvallis, I mean, like, try doing that commercially. Like, I mean, obviously, like, you're flying into Portland and you're doing,
yeah,
whatever. There's probably
or you're flying to Eugene.
It's probably like a late, yeah, exactly. Like I mean, conceivably, like if I was trying to do this trip, like as a fan, like, okay, I'm going to fly Portland to Atlanta to Tallahassee, and it's not that hard. But like door to door, Tallahassee to Corvallis has got to be one of the more extreme trips in the postseason this year.
Yeah, most definitely. So we'll see what happens. If it gets to a Sunday game, I will be down there.
So so I'm going Friday. I'm not going Saturday because we're having my dad's 85th birthday party, which
seems important.
Is getting out of hand. It's literally just going to be me, my wife and kids, and my sister and her husband and daughter, and then my dad. And all my dad wanted for his 85th birthday was to like hang out with us and have pizza. My sister has a pizza oven. And that's all he wanted was to hang out with us and have pizza. And he's not a listener of the podcast, so I can tell you this. Like, we were like, that's not enough. But it's like, I mean, he's 85. Like, unfortunately, there aren't a lot of people to invite anymore. Friends, he's kind of among the last of, his crew.
Yep.
So we're at that point. It's sad. So my sister and I have been obsessing over, like, how can we elevate this and make this special without pissing him off? Because if you're like, oh, we've got a band all of a sudden, like, he would be like, why did you waste this money? So we've turned this into so we haven't, like, we're not inviting anybody else. There is no band. We're doing the pizza. But, my dad used to like going to Reno. You're a former Reno resident. Was Fitzgerald still there when you lived in Reno, or had they already torn it down?
Do not recall, so I'm going to go with a no.
So the Fitz with Molly's Garden restaurant up on the second floor. Yeah, I love the Fitzgeralds. So my dad would go like to the Safari Club International Convention and like and hang out at the Ritz, or not the Ritz, at the Fitz. Very different, the Fitz Carlton, and play some blackjack. So we have a blackjack dealer coming in on Saturday to deal some cards. And that's our elevation. But now we're like, well, how do we like are there prizes for the top blackjack dealer? And like, how much like incentive do we need to make sure that our dad has to want to play cards for 3 hours? So like, how big does the prize need to be? It's like, so we're like in our heads about this birthday party.
I love that.
My dad's also a big Shania Twain fan. So I did order on short notice a 6-foot cutout of Shania Twain to have at the blackjack table. So she will play blackjack with us.
Amazing.
Shania Twain's only 5'4" in real life. This isn't even life size. This is like extra life size Shania Twain.
Amazing. By
the way, they're not pre-existing like Shania Twain cutouts that you can just order. It's not like an Amazon thing where they've got like a warehouse of these. I had to go to Etsy and find somebody. Funny enough, I want to say Tallahassee, but definitely in Florida, to print this off and send it on short notice with high shipping costs to be here by Saturday.
Yeah, I was going to say, oh, baby.
So I'll be at game 1 on Friday.
Yes.
So if the Beavers close out on Saturday, think of me. I'll be hitting soft 17 against a face card. And then Sunday, if there's a game 3, I'll head back down to Corvallis. But
yeah, I would have been there Friday, but 3 p.m. start time is not friendly towards news.
It's so funny because it's like so ideal for us.
Oh, it's amazing for you guys.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, for us it was like, I was like, why would we go down there when we're only going to produce one thing of content and we can get sound off of the box account? Everyone is thrilled with our explanations right now. It just didn't make a lot of logical sense for us to put that much time and effort into a game that isn't going to be something
determine the fate of either team.
Exactly.
I have a question I've been chewing on for a couple of days, and I am curious because I think that you can take this different ways. But Oregon State and Florida State, which school do you believe has the more impressive stable of major league alumni? I do not
Oh.
expect you to be able to name too many Florida State major leaguers.
Yeah, that's not in my repertoire.
But Oregon State, we're talking Jacoby Ellsbury, Michael Conforto, Matt Boyd, Stephen Kwan, Adley Rutschman. Obviously Bazana's not a major leaguer yet, but number 1 overall pick. Iva Arquette's going to be a top 5 pick, but maybe we can't count those guys yet. But like I'm saying, that's a pretty good 5.
Yep.
Okay. Florida State. I think Florida State has the best player alumni wise in this matchup. They have Buster Posey.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Okay.
You have an award named after you? Yeah, that works.
Okay. Deion Sanders.
Forgot he played baseball there. Yeah. Okay.
JD Drew. Longtime major leaguer.
I'm not going to claim to have a ton of MLB historical knowledge here.
Okay, I'm just going to keep going.
Okay.
Jameis Winston played baseball at Florida State.
That's funny.
Okay. And if I'm going number 5, I'm sure there are better. Well, this is not major league alumni, by the way, because obviously, I guess the question in my head is the most impressive former players from these schools. Doug Minkiewicz, by the way, is a good one if we're talking big leaguers from Florida State, former Minnesota Twin and Met. But my favorite name on the Florida State baseball alumni list, I think I could give you approximately 97 years, and you would not get this person.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't have.
I'm not going to have any guesses.
Can you just pick a name? Any name from American sports history, and then I'll tell you what it really is. Because the real answer might be more random than whatever you can pull out of thin air right now.
Bo Jackson.
Went to Auburn, so that would be random.
Yeah.
But you're in the right sport.
Okay.
Lee Corso.
Amazing.
Played baseball at Florida State.
Amazing.
There might be some other guys on here because, again, like you, I'm not a baseball, expert. Rick Langford played at Florida State and played in the majors for 10 years as a pitcher. So it's like, that's probably more impressive than Lee Corso from a strict, baseball pedigree standpoint. But in terms of a name, I would say that in terms of names, I have to give the edge to Florida State. They have Neon Deion, Jameis Winston, Lee Corso, Buster Posey. But if I'm building a lineup out of former players in this series, Oregon State's pretty stacked historically.
Yeah, it's an all-time celebrity row there for Florida State.
Yeah.
But in terms of actual production, you got to give it to OSU.
Yeah, or does Buster Posey just it doesn't matter who Oregon State has because they've got the biggest star in the matchup. It does have in the NBA playoffs. Does it just come down to who has the best player in the series, and that's all that matters? So does Buster Posey outweigh the whole thing?
Well,
this is a meaningful sports debate, Brenna.
This is fascinating for people to listen to, I'm sure.
I thought it was interesting. What can I say?
No, it is. I had no idea about Lee Corso.
I was having this conversation with someone yesterday, by the way, who then wanted to turn this into the conversation about how Michael Conforto is a bust. And that made me really sad also as a quasi Mets fan, because Michael Conforto was a great Met for a year or 2 years and now is sort of hanging on with the Dodgers. But I don't think Michael Conforto's a bust. I think he's been too good at his peak to be considered a bust. That said, I accept that his peak of production was shorter, and he never quite broke through as the mainstream star that they thought he was going to be. But really good Major League ball player. So that kind of hurt my feelings a little bit to hear somebody call Michael Conforto a bust.
I'm sorry about your feelings.
You're not sorry about my feelings. That is the opposite of what you are. Okay, Brenna. So college baseball, awesome. We're in the meat of the year. My dad's 85th birthday party. Limited guest list, but Shania Twain will be there. The Softball World Series continues without the Oregon Ducks. They're done.
Yep.
Is there anything else you want to touch on before we move on to the weekend?
To the weekend.
Like leaving this podcast to go.
Yes.
Not to talk about the weekend. Jeopardy Masters. Wednesday night on ABC.
What's going on Wednesday night on ABC?
Jeopardy Masters? Have you not been watching the Jeopardy Masters tournament?
No, that has not been in my rotation. I'm sorry.
I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely that time of year where we're really focused on what's going on in Corvallis and Eugene. It's kind of our last blast. So this weekend is it. We're not going to be down there for a really long time after this.
It's a good point. It's kind of the end of local sporting events.
Yep.
Until college football starts.
Yeah.
And we're getting very close to turning the page to hey, how do we feel about this Ducks schedule? How do we feel about what the Beavers are going to do? Could the Beavers go 10-2 in the regular season? Do the Beavers have a schedule that sets them up for an outside run at a CFP bid? Do the Beavers have as long as the offensive line is as good as it's been in past years? Does this Beavers defense and suddenly a stud quarterback make them really competitive and really intriguing? Is Dante Moore really a Heisman finalist at Oregon? There's lots of things to get to in college football, but first we have to get through college baseball because the Beavers are keeping the dream alive.
And it's disappointing to me that we don't have more to talk about when it comes to the Blazers. But the ping pong balls went the way they went. So, and in terms of the team sale, I think that it's going to be a few more, at least, weeks until we have anything of interest to talk about there. So,
yeah, I think the sale, who knows, right? But I think there's a lot that's going to need to, unfold, before the sale makes any meaningful progress, at least in terms of public knowledge.
Yeah.
The draft, here's the thing about the draft and the Blazers, and we're, here we are 3 weeks away from the draft, so there's some time. But I do find myself kind of getting pulled in by the draft every year. Even though the Blazers only have the number 11 pick, you start looking at names, you're like, ooh, Asa Newell from Georgia. Maybe he'd be a good fit. Maybe, Cedric Coward from Washington State. Maybe he'd be a good fit. And you start kind of going down the list and getting a little bit intrigued by some of these people. And it's obviously a very different conversation than I think everybody hoped the Blazers would be having.
Yeah.
Do you take Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper with the number 2 pick because the Blazers jumped in the lottery? Oh, gosh, what number should Cooper Flagg wear that will eventually be retired in the rafters next to Lloyd Neal? Obviously not the conversation you're having, but I think there's some interesting stuff. There are going to be some big offseason questions to get into with them as well in terms of, do you are you extending Shaden Sharp? Are you moving off of Anthony Simons now and trying to find a trade partner, or are you just letting that contract expire? Does anybody want DeAndre Ayton? What about Tumani Kamara? Because you could extend him now as well. There's a lot. But that's what July is going to be for. That's what the second half of June is going to be for. So I'm looking forward to all of that. BG. But mostly, welcome back to the Oregonian Sports Podcast.
Yeah, we're back,
We've been
baby.
MIA.
We're back with a vengeance.
My week-long 101 fever. Let me tell you, not enough to really be truly miserable, but just enough to make me so lethargic and bummy that I couldn't do anything. I could not do anything. And shout out to my wife, by the way, Leslie Oram, holding it down with the kids, taking care of the sick one and the healthy one, and also not entirely forgetting about me back in my hovel of our bedroom. So I appreciate that, because it would not have worked without her. That's for sure. She doesn't listen to this podcast. She doesn't know that she's getting shouted out, but I feel like it's important that everybody else knows.
Shout out Leslie.
Exactly. All right, Brenna. Without any further parting thoughts, we're going to get out of here. By the time we come back, we will know who the Beavers will be playing in Omaha, because when you outscore your opponents 50-6, what did I say it was? Whatever it was. Whatever the number was. 24 runs in 47 hours, or 47 runs in 24. a lot.
43 runs in 27 hours.
Thank you. You are destined for greatness beyond a super regional. So as long as the Beavers keep the bats alive the way they have been, it's really not going to matter what Florida State does. So we'll see if they can keep that momentum going. If Trent Caraway can keep
hitting bombs,
dingers, going to make a huge difference going forward for the Beavs. So we'll have more on that next week. Brenna, thank you very much. This has been the Oregonian Sports Podcast. Tell your friends to listen, rate, subscribe, read the Oregonian, watch Coin 6 with Brenna Greene. She's on TV. How cool is that? It's like, I used to think, Brenna, when I was a kid, my parents would talk to me about, if there's ever a fire, you need to go to, a door and get out of the house safely. And I remember saying, but what about my friends in the TV? And thinking that I needed to, break open the television to get, Elmo and Big Bird out.
Mm.
And I want you to know that
someone's Elmo and Big Bird.
I want you to know that if my house is ever on fire, I will break my TV screen to pull you out of the TV.
Thank you so much.
So you won't.
That's the kindest thing anyone's ever said to me. Thank you.
All right, Brenna, we'll talk next week. Thank you for listening.
On that note,